University, and we are also very excited because she'll be presenting her professional work as a director as part of our season. It's her very first time presenting work in the UAE, and it's the closing event of our third season for the Art Center. So good morning, Joanna.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I wanted to start, for those who hopefully have read the blurb, maybe watched the videos on our website, but don't know that much more about Noura, to see if you could just talk a little bit about the show and beyond what's already in our promotional materials. What should people know about the piece before they come?
Yeah, it centers on a woman named Noura, she and her family immigrated from Iraq as refugees. They've just gotten their citizenship. 8 years later, they got their American passports. It's Christmas Eve, and Noura has been dreaming of uniting her family in a particular way for several decades, and this is the Christmas she hopes to do it. It looks at motherhood, it looks at feminism, it looks at what makes up a marriage, it looks at what happens as women when we try to manage our lives and our children's lives and our households and our careers, and takes a particularly insightful look at what it means to leave home, what it means to leave your country, and when you look back, it's not there anymore, it's not there in the same way. It's a very, we've gathered the cast from around the world, and we've gotten some really wonderful responses from around the world to this issue of dislocation and what it means now.
And this issue of dislocation and the issue of leaving home and reinventing yourself and the issues of changing cultural standards are so central to the piece and so central to, I think, many people's experiences living and working in the UAE.
Yeah, now, it's been an amazing piece to work on as I moved my family to the UAE and left America and became an expat myself, I have to say. It's really, when it premiered at the Shakespeare Theatre in DC in February, it resonated in a particular way on our American stages. When we see refugee stories, usually what we see is somebody who's poor and doesn't have a job and doesn't have anywhere to live, and this is a middle-class family. She's an architect, he's a doctor. These are, they have their American passports, they have an apartment in New York, he has a good job, their child is thriving, and that doesn't solve it. That doesn't solve the question of identity.
And as you were getting ready to open the U.S. premiere in D.C., Heather Raffel came to visit you in Abu Dhabi, and you had sort of your final round of development time to work on the piece together before it premiered there. How did that time here, working in the context of NYU Abu Dhabi and working just in the UAE on the piece, shift the work as compared to where it might have been going had you been building it solely in the U.S.?
Well, it was incredible what Noura dreamed of was rebuilding Iraq. She dreamed of creating and recreating the civic institutions and the pathways for people to have community together in the buildings, in the roads. And so for us to be here in this country that's inventing itself in real time, I don't think there's anywhere you can go that has more cranes. So to go through, I mean, we got to spend time in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai, really looking at a city that is constructing itself in a country that's constructing itself in an utterly contemporary context. Who do we want to be? And with real theatricality and style and a sense of joy and celebration of what's possible. So for us, I mean, just, having a taxi pull up to Zaha Hadid's hotel that has a big hole in it in the shape of Iraq. Really, it was an incredibly compelling time. And this place is part of why I moved here. This place opens the possibility for invention and reinvention and the generation of new knowledge. And has a very different time signature than working in the States on a regional theater or an off-Broadway production calendar. It's very, very different, and it allows for different kinds of ideas.
So when you talk about the play, you talk a lot about this idea of reinvention, about deciding who you want to be and sort of redefining what you consider home. When you've spoken about your work and your decision to move your work and move your life here to the UAE, those are issues that are not just issues in the play, but those are issues that you're often talking about in your own professional, personal life. Tell me a little bit about that and about some of that resonance. I know the piece after it goes here is going back to the U.S. to one of the leading off-Broadway theaters, Playwrights Horizon in New York. You also have an opera that's going to be premiering at Opera Philadelphia. So in many ways, your work in the U.S. is thriving and going into some of the most significant institutions in the U.S. At the same time, you talk about the reinvention and the relocation of your work here in the UAE, kind of anchored at NYU Abu Dhabi. So talk a little bit about how this fits into your personal and professional trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was outside the gates, wanting to get access to those major stages, I'm in the house in the States. I'm in the venues I want to work in, and I've been in them for a number of years, and it's been wonderful. I've had I'm very proud of the work that I've made in all those collaborations. But the format is quite set in the States. The work process, the union process, the format is really quite set, and I've been in those venues for close to a decade now. Around our work processes in the States, our work output is becoming fixed, I think. And you know, when I come here and I see the work that is pouring out of the visual arts, pouring out of film, the theatricality of the architecture and performance, the spoken word poetry that's happening here, there's a scene of artists that are just jumping from this place. And I think it's an opportunity to collide artists across many mediums in this moment of invention in this country and really advance the medium in a way that's very hard to do in a place where all the best practices are established. It's hard to do. So I find it very inspiring. Maybe I'll retire, maybe I won't make any more work. I'm open to that, but I don't think so. I think, you know, as I hang out with my colleagues here across several mediums, I think something new could happen without the pressure of delivering that $1 million opera into that festival. And you know, it's a little more open what we have the possibility to do here. So.
And tell me about how your teaching fits into this, and about the students at NYU Abu Dhabi. You've taught elsewhere. You've taught in the States at the University of the Arts. This is a very particular, or many very particular kinds of students in the NYU Abu Dhabi University. What's been the impact on your teaching, and what's been the impact on the way that you're thinking about theater now that you've taught 2 semesters here?
I think to teach here you have to completely rethink teaching. And I've taught directing for 20 years. I've taught BA, BFA, MA, MFA, PhD. I got into this directing studio here with these students, and it becomes immediately apparent that what theater is, what directing is, what a story is, this all has to be reevaluated. The students are not on a whole studying with me so that they can try and get a show at the Public Theater or at Playwrights Horizons. They're not headed to off-Broadway. They're not modeling on my career. It has nothing, the American system is not the question. The question is, the question here, we get very quickly and immediately and singularly to what the question really only should be, which is, what is your artistic voice? What do you want to say? What must you say, and to whom? And how can we say that in the clearest, most evocative, sparkling way possible? That should be the only question. And here, that's the question. I mean, it's really extraordinary. And then the level of feedback that the students give each other, the level of collaboration in the classroom. A 12-student directing classroom is quite big. In an MFA program, there are 2 directors. in a studio, and then you populate it with actors to help them. In the directing studio here, they're all in each other's work. So all of these directors were piling into each other's projects, trying on the roles, stepping out and becoming the director, giving each other feedback. It's an extraordinarily generous place. Of those 12 students, I think 7 countries were represented.
So you're talking about the student body and about how one of the things you're teaching them is to determine kind of what they want to say and to whom.
Yeah.
One of the things that I also think about within the context of NYU Abu Dhabi as liberal arts college and not a conservatory is that the arts are a way of knowing. They're a way of seeing the world and processing the world, not just as a maker, but also as an audience member.
No.
Whereas Tanya Khoury was talking about a lot in relation to Garden Speak, she talked a lot about the idea of being a witness and about the responsibility that comes with witnessing. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you've experienced thus far as an audience member in the UAE.
Well, I tell you, I'm chasing Tanya Khoury to her home in Beirut in 2 weeks. As soon as Noura is closed, I'm going to hang
security,
out.
I hope.
Yeah. I'm going to hang out with Tanya, who has colleagues coming from London and invited me to join them to just the free exchange of ideas. This theater program in particular, blurs the distinction between practice and scholarship. I can tell you that it's an extreme pleasure to present work here and then see what happens. Part of my interview process was an artist talk. So I came and I spoke for about 40 minutes about my trajectory as an artist, and then looked at 2 or 3 pieces of mine and just spoke a little bit about what I was working on. And the 20 minutes of conversation with the audience, who were NYU Abu Dhabi faculty across several programs, was the most exciting. Nothing in 25 years of receiving press, binders and binders of press, nothing was as interesting or stimulating and helpful and thought-provoking. I was ready to go back into rehearsal on everything I'd shared. I felt so grateful. I mean, it's an invigorating, it's a great place to learn. It generates knowledge in the way that we collide, and by we I include the students and the artists that you bring. This is like a wet lab. You know, the sciences have their wet labs where the cells actually mix. And we have this, where the students and the guest artists coming in and the faculty and the instructors and the staff and the audiences, we're all mixing and unpredictable things happen. I mean, my thought for how to have myself impacted by the place and to start working on the medium is actually to hang out and count on it happening, you know?
And to push the sort of scientific metaphor there, do you have a hypothesis of what you think is going to result from all of this alchemy that's happening? Or
I think the UAE is poised to be the center of performance, in the center of interdisciplinary English language predominantly, but multi-language probably, performance for the region. I mean, scenes have a hub. People jump in and spring out and jump in and spring out. Paris has been a hub many, many times. Cairo has been a hub. I mean, we're in a really good position, and it's your curating. It's this institution, and it's creating a kind of gravitational center where we can swing in and then swing back out to home and then come back. I think we're really poised to do something very special.
And what are the other characteristics of the scene that you think are setting it up to be this kind of hub?
I mean, it's Abu Dhabi, it's the UAE itself. I mean, the university is this outcropping of it. For me, it's literally looking out the window of my housing and watching this desert be curated into residential areas, and I mean, very slowly, watching the landscape change. It's the audience. The audience will feed back. The audience coming to the work you're presenting writes in as we've seen. Now that I'm an artist in your season, I've seen that the audience is right in and they have questions and they want what they want and they come when they come. And I've seen you respond. I've never seen anything like it. Every question that comes in about the piece gets a response from the Arts Center. I mean, this is a new model in every way. So I think, I mean, it seems like what's happening here at this Arts Center and in the arts and humanities at NYU Abu Dhabi and with the students and the general public is, who knows? I mean, it's a moment. I can't think of another time or place like this.
So let's go back and rewind about 13 years to your first collaboration with Heather Rockfeld, because this is the second major project that you've done with her, but you've had a very long sort of
the first was 9 Parts of Desire, and it was a play about started when Heather was in graduate school at UCSD, and all of the acting students had to present. There weren't any roles. There weren't any roles for what she was. English language roles for Arab heritage women. She couldn't find any, so she wrote one as her final project. She wrote a 20-minute monologue, and that continued. She developed it across many, many years, and when it started to move into off-Broadway, I was teamed with her, and it ran for 9 months. It ran for 9 months in New York. I'm smiling because I found out I was pregnant with Logan the first week of rehearsal for that show, and he was born the night before it closed off-Broadway, and for the first year and a half of his life, he wasn't anywhere for more than 5 weeks because the show went all over the country. And now he's in Noura. He's playing, Heather is his godmother, and he's playing her son in the show. So it's really quite all come together.
Yeah, very personal. And have you worked on other projects in between, or have you been just more focused on developing your careers in parallel, and then how did this project bring you back together?
She performed, I don't know if you remember In Darfur, but she was in Darfur.
Okay, right.
So she performed in that. She worked on she wrote the libretto for an opera about Fallujah that I helped her develop at the Kennedy Center, and then it went on.
And that was with Emir Safar, who's been here, right?
Yeah.
He did the music for that.
Yeah. No, Emir Safar did, they created a concert version of 9 Parts of Desire. Okay. Yeah, this was with a Canadian composer, whose name I'm blanking on, sorry. It'll come in a minute. Yeah, so we've also, I mean, we raised 3 children, she had 2, I had 1. It's been a long friendship. Feels like we've worked on everything together, but we haven't. She's been in a few things I've directed. Yeah.
And what is your process in terms of working on this piece together at this point in your respective careers? How do you approach it? Because she's playing two roles in this. She's both the playwright and she's also the lead actor.
Yeah, she's extraordinary. She has an uncanny ability in rehearsal to home base to acting. She is having an absolutely breakthrough moment in her work as a performer. It's such a pleasure to be around her while she's working, and to have this rich history. You know, the notes that we give each other reference our lives across, a decade and a half. It's really something. So she, in rehearsal, is 100% the performer, and then when the writer has an idea, you see she's in the scene, and then suddenly she's just kind of saying the lines and watching her scene partner say his lines. And she walks out, just walks off the stage. And I sit down in the audience, and she comes out, and she comes and sits next to me, and she says, I think this is work. Is this? I have an idea about it. And I realized that the actress left, and the playwright came in,
and the playwright's saying, I'm not sure about that actor.
Yeah, no. No, and we also have, sometimes people talk about how wonderful and supportive the collaborative process. That's not always the case with us. We very directly and without apology challenge each other's choices. And it gets us, I think it's something we both have articulated, appreciating a great deal, because we get to the next round. We aren't, the faith and the love and the belief in each other is just foundational and unshakable. So then we can say this isn't it, it doesn't work, it's not ever going to work, it's not, and so we get somewhere, the trust is so deep that we go quite quickly through things.
So you have that depth of relationship, and of course your son, Logan, and that depth of relationship. Tell me about the rest of the company and how they enter into this kind of very long, very deep history and dynamic.
Yeah, it was very complicated to cast. Both of the two men, Matthew David and Nabil El Wahabi, were both cast from Skype. Looking for these guys was a global search, really. To find the actors for this. Nabil comes to us from London. Matthew comes from Detroit. He was raised in Flint, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has the largest Arab population outside of the Middle East. And we went there for a week to develop the piece at the Arab American Museum. It was a very key development process, and heard about him, and then later got his Skype interview. So these guys are coming in with everybody in the play, and this happens actually. Everybody in the play is kind of a lead performer with a different process. I think I'm quite drawn to performers who come into the room with a strength and a clarity and a distinctiveness that sometimes you're looking for a company to turn into an ensemble and really seem like a well-oiled team. I'm really interested in the ways that we are individuals, the ways that we are all strikingly ourselves, and this, sometimes community is made up with agreement and sometimes it's collision. And us, being present with each other in our distinction. So the rooms I like to work in tend to have some very serious people entirely themselves, and there's a kind of freshness. You'll see it on the stage. There's a freshness. Whoever enters, they're different. Every time someone enters this play, there's it's like a window's thrown open and a fresh breeze blows in. I mean, it's an invigorating company to work with. And then Dalia Azima, who's very close with Bana, who works in the gallery. It's so funny. Anyway, it's a long story, but I found myself sending a selfie with Bana to Dalia the other night. She's from Cairo. She's an American. She's wonderful. There's no one like her. She's irreplaceable.
And when you talk about the sort of the individuality within the sort of the unit of the company, the first thing that comes to mind is thinking about the relationship of this piece to A Doll's House by Ibsen, which is a reference point for here, and that sense within A Doll's House of the family unit is not all without seams, and it's there are the moments of eruption where individuals assert themselves within that context of the family. So I'm wondering if you could maybe just to kind of wrap up by framing a little bit of that relationship of
Noura to Doll's House.
To Doll's House.
Heather began kicking Doll's House is not my favorite play. So when she called me and said she'd been working with Doll's House and she had a contemporary Iraqi family wrestling with some of the themes, she literally said, "Never mind. Don't read the draft I just sent you. We'll come and read it to you." She said, "Never mind. It's a surprise. I'm not gonna. Don't moan at me about my play.
Okay.
I don't even read it. We're gonna have a rehearsal. We'll read it to you, and you'll see." And it was like a dare. I said, "Great!" And I archived the email and figured out how to get everybody to Philly. So Doll's House, at this point, it's not an adaptation. It's like I feel like it's a response to Doll's House, this play. Doll's House ignited a conversation about whether or not women are even allowed or entitled to leave their marriage under any circumstance. But it presented a tremendously binary circumstance where the question was if she was right or wrong to break up with her mean husband. And so the feminist discourse, for me, it's been explained to me by brilliant people that this play is striking and original and that Ibsen is a genius, and I just have to believe all of them. But for me, so students don't throw out Doll's House, but you don't have to bring it to class. For me, he's just a jerk in every way, and she left. So it's not a complicated discourse for me. These questions about, it's just she's in an abusive situation and then she finally stops being in that situation and we're glad. It's just not that complex for me. I appreciate the theater was almost burned down at the time that it was shown, but this is a different time. In Heather's play, that's not what happens. And we actually take a look at what's so extraordinarily hard about the many, many ways that enduring the tension of a successful, supportive, loving marriage is still very challenging, and the myriad ways that we set ourselves aside. Oftentimes I think with other people, what looks like the thing that you simply cannot and must not bear, and the thing that is your growth opportunity are identical. These things look exactly alike. So how do you know if you're investing in a situation that is right, or if you're betraying yourself and making a tragic mistake that will debilitate your ability to be a good partner? Like, how do you know these things? And it's certainly a question in parenting. How am I going to be the right mother to my son if I don't actualize myself as a person, if he doesn't see me in my full intellectual activated power in the world? And how am I going to be a great mother to my son if I'm in rehearsal all the time? And when you're one place, you're not the other. There's no have it all. You just begin to become comfortable on the three-legged stool of the imbalance. You begin to tolerate the imbalance. So I think this piece looks at these considerations. Obviously the condition of being away from home and maybe not having a return is its own track in this, but certainly how we manage identity inside a marriage and a family, I think is at least the lead.
And then the young woman who visits them from Mosul throws a lot of those questions into heightened relief in terms of the way that she's living her own life.
Yes.
And I think we're now probably in danger of giving away too much.
We're not going to give away anything except to say that you can count on a 20-year-old not being what you anticipate them being.
Right.
And part of the oomph of this play is the acknowledgement and the strength of the generational voice. That's why, I think if performance is going to take a step, it has to be master artists and artists in development hand in hand, so that those generational voices are colliding. Brecht wrote Ball when he was 26 years old. It's like a howl in the night.
Yeah, and I think that to me, to see this show where so much of the off-Broadway theater structures in the U.S. tend to be people my age and older, to have it at a university where the assumption isn't that you're going to really identify with Noura and her husband and the parents in this. Yeah. That a very large part of our audience is going to be of the age of the young woman who is arriving. And so all of those questions about what is your lens into the piece and where do you find the truth in the narrative, especially in this very young city and the university, I think is also going to resonate in really fascinating ways. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I can't wait. Yeah. I haven't been nervous about a play opening in a long time, but what's this going to be? All right, good. Yeah. Well, we'll find out. So thank you, Joanna Settle. Thank you. Thank you, Clive Primrose, for hosting us here today.